My name is Jans Aasman. I'm the CEO of France Inc. Our main product is AllegroGraph, and I'm giving you a talk today with Bert Smith, who's standing in for Shannon Copeland of Accenture. Bert and Shannon were working for a big call center called N3 Results in Atlanta, and we've been working together on this project for the last 5 years. About 2 years ago, I was in this audience. Well, I think we were online, and I talked about the knowledge graph that listens, and I talked extensively about how we listen to conversations and then extract knowledge out of these conversations and put it in a knowledge graph. I also talked a little bit about the corporate brain that we're building, but you can talk only about one thing at a time, right? So I'm going to talk about that second thing now. That was this corporate brain. So anyone here ever worked for a call center? Okay, well, so how does a call center work? Very quickly, you have a big company, say Microsoft or whatever, and they need help selling something. They don't have enough people to do it themselves. So what happens is that a client provides a lead list to the contact center to work on a campaign. Now, a campaign is just a period of time that you try to sell a particular product, for the particular client. And the lead list is just very simple. It's a list of names and telephone numbers or email addresses that you got somewhere, right, from one of the big vendors in the space of providing leads, or we all went to a conference, people were asking for our names and telephone numbers, right? And so you get that list. If you're lucky, you also get the company name that you're calling, or that you're going to call the industry, what technology they're already using, but most of the time it's just badly misspelled names and telephone numbers, right? That's what you have to work with. And then you have a campaign, and then there are agents or BDRs assigned to a particular campaign. And then they start calling. Usually it takes 3, 4, 5 times to get to the right person. Most of the time, you first get voicemail, then you get a gatekeeper that her or his primary task is to make sure that you never talk to the person you really want to talk to, right? And then one in so many times you actually get to the person you want to talk to. Right? So that is the life of a BDR. And you hope to get to your goal, which, for example, is to take the lead and turn it into a qualified lead, one that you give back to your client, and then they can finish the sale, for example. And most of the time, qualified lead means that you got to bend, right? You figured out that the person you talk to actually has a budget, and he can make a decision to buy something. He actually has a need to buy something, and he can even specify when, by what time he needs to have that particular product. And there's many other types of campaigns. Sometimes sometimes you even sell a product. Sometimes you set an appointment, and that's it. Now we took all that data, or we're taking all that data in real time, and we're turning that into a knowledge graph. Right? This is a knowledge graph conference. I'm not going to kind of explain much here. You guys already know how all this works. So what you see here is we have here 2 different clients. I just made them up. DigitalOcean Cloud Services. Actually, they're real cloud services. So this is a client from the call center N3 that we work for. They do a campaign. For example, this is just the name of a campaign. They're trying to sell cloud storage. Of course, the campaign is only a temporal object for start time and end time. And then there are BDRs that have to work for a particular campaign. This guy here works both for a certain amount of time from start time to end time for this campaign, and he also works for this campaign, right? This person here, Stephanie, works for this campaign, and she's talking to a contact person, the one that you got on your lead list, right? Now, because we already have a knowledge graph, we knew that she was first working at the CVS in Oakland, and they already have Microsoft Office and AWS. They're a pharmaceutical, but now she's working at AllegroGraph, right? And they're using these products, and they're up in the food business, right? So this is kind of the rough idea of how this, what we call an entity event knowledge graph works. Clear, right? Simple. It's way more complicated, but so we have that, and you can do already enormous amount of data analytics just with that graph. But that data is actually only about 10% of the data we really have, because you can make that whole thing 100 times more valuable by adding magic. In our case, that means you add insights from spoken conversations to the graph. Yeah? So it's this voice call that she made with this person here. And what we do is we take insights out of the spoken conversation and add it to the knowledge graph. So now, and what we mean by that is, so we start with the spoken conversation. We have to split the conversation in what the agent says and what the customer says, right? Because you can't just clump it all together and do analytics on it. That doesn't work at all. Well, you can do a lot with that, but it's better to split it up. Do that in 20 different languages. We use multiple speech recognition engines, and most of them, fortunately, can be trained because I've been working for 20 years in speech technology, and I can't believe how good speech technology has gotten, right? It's just unbelievable compared to 20 years ago what you can do, except they still completely suck at names, right? Names of people, names of products, names of companies. Some are better than others, right? So what we do is we build taxonomies, and then we train these speech recognizers. Unfortunately, I mean, it would be great if there's a standard for that, right? Because each of them does it completely different. Anyway, we train them, and then we get the text. Now, most of the NLP technology that is developed here by us and by humanity, right, is trained on something as good as Wikipedia, right? But have you ever seen how human beings really talk when they talk, right? This amount of text, if you could filter out and just take all the garbage out, you usually get to a conversation this small, right? So we're using kind of a chatbot technology to turn these really chaotic conversation into a much shorter, understandable English. And then we do all our NLP. The easiest thing is just to get the entities out using our taxonomies. The hard part is to answer business questions, right? We call those the insights. Very straightforward is to get to band. For example, you want to know budget. Well, there's probably 30, 40 ways to say in English that you have money to pay for something, right? So we kind of fished it out with rules and patterns. It gets really hard to figure out what are the objections that people have with regard to the competitors' products or your products, right? So that is really a lot of different NLP techniques. But today we're not talking about these techniques. But still an amazing, fun project to work on. So now we have this knowledge graph. And we have all the insights that we attached to this, right? So now what can we do it? What can we offer our clients now we've got this knowledge graph, right? Well, we have a project we jokingly call the 1,000 Questions Project, or Shannon's 1,000 Questions. And now we have this. Now we can do things that most call centers never could give to their customers, right? All the analytics that you can give them, dashboards, and input tools so they can do their own data science, right? So simple one is how many dials are required to reach mid-sized companies in Spain. Well, that's kind of simple, right? Then what people are really interested in, where's the momentum around, say, a product like Power BI? Do we see that there's a rise in mention of this? Is it going down? But then it gets harder. What are the most common objections mentioned against Power BI, right? Now we're really in things that no call center ever can tell their clients. And I don't want to go through the list. We don't have time for that. But, so this is what you can give your clients if you have a knowledge graph like that. And then as a contact center, like N3, you also want to learn about your BDRs, like how good they are. And so we can measure now the performance of a BDR based on how long they worked, as a function of how long they worked. Maybe they are really good in this industry, but really bad. Maybe good in healthcare, but bad in education, right? And maybe some people are better at setting appointments than at selling stuff. And I don't want to go too deep in this stuff too. But what you really, and we're still working on this, model the most successful BDRs, right? I mean, what do they do so that they can sell 10 times better than the other person, right? Is it the conversation style? Is it their objection handling? Do we have a strategic approach on how they go into these meetings? So this is for us very active research, modeling the best BDRs that you have. And of course, then you want to make the life of your BDRs better. So we help them create better talk track. Talk track is the thing that the BDR gets so that knows what to talk about when he gets assigned to a new campaign. I mean, imagine you're sitting, there's a BDR working on selling Uber Eats, right? And suddenly you have to go into another company, you have to sell cloud services from say, Amazon, right? Well, that's really hard. So how do you teach them, train them, and what do you give them to tell, right? And there's a general part to it, but also you're calling up one particular company. What do you already know about them, right? What is the industry they're in? How big are they? What technology are they already using? Do they already use, say, Azure or not, right? So I mean, there's lots of things that you can help them. And Britt will talk later. How much time do I have left? 0? Huh? Okay. Yeah. He will talk more about how having a better prepared contact person makes the conversion rates way higher. And then in this project of building this knowledge graph, we had to solve some really tough problems. First is disinvigoration at scale. So you get these contact lists with names of people, and you know how variable that can be, right? With addresses that are really hard to decipher. But thank God a phone number, and then these people work for companies that also have different spellings. Anyways, we spent enormous amount of time, and almost every company in the US, by the way, does it, yeah? Disinvigorating the names of your customers so that we merge them all together. But we've come up with a really powerful process. So we can work on literally millions of companies, and in real time, when a new thing comes in, we instantly can say, well, it's almost certainly this particular company that we're talking about, right? And so that is one problem we have to solve. The other one is anonymization. So for certain use cases, for certain cross-client analytics, you just can't, because of all kinds of regulations, show the real name. So you have to anonymize. So we spent a lot of time on that too. Sometimes it's relatively easy if you only have to do the names of companies, but sometimes you have to even anonymize the conversations and go into the text. A really hard problem. Then there's GDPR, right? And California has something that looks like GDPR. And you get a huge fine. You guys all know what GDPR is, right? The right to be forgotten. Well, $25,000 if you were not forgotten. You promised that you would forget a particular person, right? So, but because of the model that we're using, the so-called entity event model, where we make the company the core entity, the company that you're trying to sell to, the core entity, and then every interaction in the call center becomes an event that we attach to that particular entity. And then we make sure that the fourth element of every triple in that knowledge graph is the entity, the entity identifier. So with literally one button, we can say, delete every triple about a particular person, or in most cases, we just can say, anonymize every triple about this particular person, and we're still good, right? That's one issue, and that's still doable. The hard one is the contractual issue with sharing your data. So no client wants you to leak to other clients, right? There's a whole story around it, but I'm through my time here. So basically what we had to do, create a solution where we physically separate the knowledge graph for each separate client, right? And federate that with all the things that we learned about these clients, so that we can promise our clients that, okay, your data is never going to go to anyone else, but the N3 data scientists still can do the analytics over all the multi-tenants at the same time, using our federation model. And we also have a distributed AllegroGraph where we can do sharded processing. So this is kind of how it works. You have examples of tenants, their campaign information, the BDRs that worked on it, for sentences, transcripts, insights, taxonomies. And then, so this is one. You could have multiple of these clients, right? And then we have the landlord knowledge base, which has the distributed companies, context, BDRs, lots of other information that's not specific to those clients. And I think, let me just summarize so that Britt can have some time. Yeah, so we built this corporate brain for contact and CRM centers. Every client gets its own corporate brain, but data scientists still can do overall analytics over all the tenants. And we really can promise our clients that they won't get cross-contaminated. And that was my part of the story. We'll do the questions later. Bert, you go first.
Yeah, you have roughly 10 minutes, and then we We have roughly 10 minutes, and then questions offline.
Okay, you go. All right.
Let me get you into your one. Okay, you should be all good to go.
Very good.
So,
So good afternoon. Excuse me. I'm not that good-looking guy with a really good-looking CV on the screen, but I've been fortunate enough to work with him for the last 10 years in several of his engagements, helping him to take his vision for the application of technology into companies that have large business problems that are very difficult to solve. And in that last 10 years, I've had the great fortune of working with the Franz Company and Shannon to deliver these technologies. He apologizes. He got called into all hands board meeting with his boss flying in from India with Accenture and couldn't come up here today to present. But he asked me to step in, and since we worked together for the last 10 years, I think I have a pretty good understanding of what he's been communicating. So he looks at this from a couple different ways, but certainly his customers and what are the big problems that they can help as a company, Accenture and this business unit N3, solve for his customers. So what are some of the big inflection points that have influenced and changed for his client base that he had to adapt for? One is to make the messaging better. If you think about it, you pick up the phone and there's someone on the other end of the line, you have 10, 15 seconds to either be compelling or to get hung up on. So being able to differentiate yourself as a company, and be able to quickly establish whether there's a connection and value there is just, it's mission critical. This is the essence of their job, is to figure out what to say and how to say it intelligently. The second piece of that is they have to be able to scale this up. They have thousands of people on the phone around the globe, 24/7, doing business-to-business phone conversations and calls. So how can you aggregate the observations from all of those calls and make changes in real time? For example, you start a campaign, you're a product manager, a VP of marketing, you start a new campaign. You've trained everybody on the competitors so they can do objection handling on the phone when the customer says, well, we have XYZ, it does everything great. What do you do when there's a new competitor out there that you didn't plan for? Well, that's part of what this system can do, is to detect and come up with those grains of information and deliver them instantly in a day, as opposed to waiting weeks to get the feedback from a campaign where your typical campaign only lasts several weeks. So how do you quickly do that? And then the other piece is to adapt and help people buy in the way they want to buy. Everybody buys differently, and now with all the channels and certainly the enablement of Amazon to allow us to do whatever we want to do at any time of the day, that's trickled into the business side of being able to work and buy and communicate. So this, I think, is a great diagram. You could spend an afternoon probably looking at this one, but these are some of the influences that they see for their C-level contacts when they're selling their business opportunity to help them improve their business, to help sell. There are a couple in here that I think are particularly interesting. One is number 10, this feedback loop. It's rare that you get a feedback loop in sales. When you're doing telesales and you call up, you get a hold of a company and they go out to buy a product, if it's somebody like Cisco, they have a channel. They're not selling a product directly to anybody. They funnel everything through the channel. Same with Microsoft. So how do you connect a record over here of something got sold with a work product and effort of someone who smiled and dialed on the front end to generate that sale? So it's a very complex project, to connect those back. And that's part of what his vision for using the graph technology has enabled. And of course, there's a 14th one that I think is out there, which is everybody wants you to go faster. So let's just take a look at a little bit of the solution. What a tremendous advantage they have in the market. Hundreds of thousands of hours of these conversations. But until our technology that we built, we call it MIA. Shannon named it MIA, Marketing Intelligence Assistant. Until that was created, how would you collect that information unless you went out and interviewed each of the salespeople to determine what objections are they running into, what competitors they're running into, what's working, who has the best talk track, who has the best interaction that actually moves someone through the sales cycle. Where are they in a sales cycle? Are they at the beginning, at the middle, at the end? And of course, this happens across 7 different channels of communications. How do I want to buy? Well, I want to use SMS, or I want to use WeChat or WhatsApp to communicate and make a purchase. You want to do something over email. So you have to handle all those channels and be responsive. So visually, if you look at it, you're collecting all this information from these different channels. You also have all the client data that Jan spoke about. That's things like lists or marketing qualified leads from trade shows that have to get melded in there, product catalogs and product information. And we're able to generate over 15 different insights into the sales cycle via the phone conversation, via the email, via the text chat, all of those entities, and measure the real core parameters. The main, in sales, the main 4 parameters that you're worried about are budget, authority, need, and timing. If you haven't established that in a phone conversation or over several interactions, you're failing as a salesperson. So you have to be able to measure that. Well, we have an additional 10 plus insights that we've developed to be able to really understand what's taking place in the sales cycle. All right. So if we could push the boundaries of the human and machine interaction, what are the clients looking for? Better understanding of the product features needed, the understanding of their competition, understanding the channel. How do people want to buy? Pricing strategies. Prices go down, prices go up. How long do they last? What are the marketing promotions? All of those components. And if we could take those insights and build those sales interactions, we would create better storytellers. If you think about it, what's most engaging is when someone tells you a story about the success they have with the product, not the features, maybe a benefit here or there. So his people are really chartered with coming up with a talk track that explains exactly how is this going to benefit me as a customer, because it's all about the benefit. So a fairly complex life cycle, if you will, around our insights and how they feed into the coaching of the BDRs, the business development reps, how we're able to calibrate the performance of a campaign, what's the quality, ultimately fix the messaging if the messaging is not on target, and improve the actual promotion of the system. I'll leave this slide for you to take a look at and jump to the last slide because I think it's a bit more compelling with 30 seconds left. But you can see across the sales cycle, dramatic improvements in all of the components that represent the pieces of the MIA technology at work, the semantic graph at work. So here are just a couple I'll pick out. The voice of the customer analysis for a European power company. They were able to change their prices dynamically, which they could never do before, in order to capture new customers. Sales support automation for a $40 billion network technology vendor to improve productivity by 7%. That's huge in a large company that's doing 40 billion in sales. And to be able to right size the number of people that they had. The food delivery service, being able to increase the conversion rate by 5%. It's a huge advantage. So in conclusion, if Shannon were here, what would he say about the knowledge first design for dynamic, intelligent contact centers and beyond, the title of this presentation? I think he'd tell you it's his technology known as MIA. Thank you.